Alaska's gonna get it.
Well, Town of Pierson workshop for Monday, July the 15th at 4 p.m. will now come to order. If you would please call the roll.
Yep, Mayor Samuel Bennett,
Here.
Vice Mayor Robert Greenland,
Here.
Councilwoman Sergio Cardenas,
Here.
Councilwoman Lenny Richardson,
Here.
Councilwoman Brandy Peterson.
Here.
Thank you. And if you would bow for the invocation. Dear Father in heaven, thank you for this day that you blessed us with. Be with us as we are working here at the workshop. And thank you for this day in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Under new business, we have, this is a workshop for a budget, and you have a packet there. And is Yvonne going to be here? No. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I may. I was talking to Ryan about a week or two ago, and I asked him for the budget as we are getting near the end of the fiscal year. We also, at the other boards that I belong to, we get quarterly reports at least. It was called to my attention that a couple of money could be allocated to other stuff that is needed around town. I did see that, for instance, in the general fund, we have, if I'm not mistaken, a budget for 50 grand for new equipment. We haven't made any expenses there now. We have had a lot of expenses with our trucks, in which we've wasted, 15 grand on just fixing the trucks. I think it would be good to think about maybe a new truck. Maybe not allocating all of those monies to a brand new truck, but maybe half of it, and maybe financing it. And the rest of that money, I don't know, allocate it to other stuff where we need other money, maybe to the roads. We are able to buy a big truck of, asphalt to fix the roads, just like we did, or Lenny and Brandy did with the other roads that need fixing. That was my main concern. We are able to maybe dig up some of that money, which we haven't used, and allocate it to some other stuff where we do need it, ADA compliance at the park. So, which needs to be fixed ASAP. So we probably think that we don't have any money. We probably do in some places, but we need to just switch it around, play with the money we do have, play with, and allocate it to some other stuff where we do need it around town. So I don't know if, I would like to hand it to Ryan. He explained it very well to me last time, and it was even easier for me to understand the budget even a lot more, and he explains it very well.
Sergio, I think that's a good idea because you probably helped work on putting this together. Did Yvonne assist you, or you just did it?
Actually, Yvonne worked with this, or worked on this with our CPA,
Okay.
Jim Ashby from Weston Gregory, because she had never done one, and I know we've done them in the past, but I don't think we've been real good at adhering to them throughout the year. And so the some things that you had allocated for were like wildly off, and like Sergio said, some go untouched. I mean, we put money into certain accounts here, like for instance, we have a $27,000 a year road budget that we didn't touch at all this year. Now, you know, the patch job that we did on Hagstrom Road, that actually falls under, on our budget, what we call street materials and supplies, because it wasn't technically construction, quote unquote. But North Road is a good example, because you guys have asked me to get some numbers to fix the culverts and the road there on North Road. Okay, that is what you would use your allocated road construction budget for, right? So those things are baked into the budget, but we don't always look at the budget and then use those items. And then, you know, there's some things on here that, okay, so just as an example, this is through June 30th, right? So as of June 30th, we're 75% of the way through our fiscal year. So if you look over here at the percent of budget on this far right column, you want these numbers to be either below or at that 75 mark. There's some things where we're way over. Now, the town center, for instance, we knew that was going to be high, because when they did this budget, we hadn't even moved into this building. So there were obviously going to be unforeseen things that we had to spend money on here, repairing AC units, the painting, that kind of stuff. What we really, I think, need to look at, and like I agree with Sergio, this should be a quarterly thing. The CPA would like this to become a quarterly thing, where I come to you and I give you a quarterly budget update, and I say, we've overspent here, or we're not utilizing this well. But I think what we do need to maybe look at doing is, as we go through the year, we reallocate some stuff. In other words, if we say, hey, it's going to be a big year for equipment repairs, we probably need to take some money from somewhere that we're not using it, reallocate it to equipment repairs. So that's kind of what this list is for you to see where we have maybe overspent our budget. And also, you know, this helps us as a guide for next year, because some of these budgeted numbers were a total guess. You know, Jim and Yvonne based them off of what we spent the prior year, but that could have been like an off year, you know what I mean? So maybe the year they based it on, things were particularly high in one area where they're not usually. So I think this is kind of a way for us to use this as a barometer to determine how we're going to budget things next year. But Sergio is correct that we have, you know, Jim bakes stuff into this budget. Like, for instance, there's a $40,000 budgeted item for new equipment at our parks. Because when we worked on this budget, we had just finished up that FERDAP stuff, and we were talking about how our parks were in need of some maintenance and some repairs. So, you know, we talked about looking at FERDAP again for that, but this could be a matching fund that you could use, or, you know, if you get to the end of the year and you haven't spent any of that, you might have to allocate it somewhere else. But I mean, as you're going down the list, we've done okay. Now, one thing I will point out to you is that if you look at the front page of your general fund budget, this is your income. So this is money in from the state. A lot of it is from the state or the county. It's our share of the property taxes, it's our share of sales tax, it's our share of franchise fees. These numbers actually come from the state. The state estimates these every year, and Jim pulls these from there. You can see that we're low in some areas, like sales. Our portion of the half-cent sales tax is way under 75%. So the state missed its projections on that. So our income is lower there. And now if you look at the very bottom where it says total income, you'll see we're at 100%, which means we're doing better. That's because we sold the bank building. So if you took that out, I don't know where we would be. Right? That's just the kind of thing that we have to look for. So if you took out that $423,000, you know, where exactly would the budget fall, and are you going to have shortfalls? And if you do, then maybe some of our expenses we just need to rein in until the end of the year. I think the concern that had happened in previous years is that we overspent our budget, and then Jim had to somehow justify to the state, why did we overspend our budget, right? So At the end of the day, we can reallocate money from different accounts, but the overall budget, I just don't wanna think we wanna go over. We don't wanna outspend what, we're bringing in. Some things did really well. I mean, some things we've gotten a lot more of. Like if you look at the top line, current real estate taxes, we budgeted 440,000, we've already brought in almost 4. So we've done way better on that one than they originally estimated. But then there's other things that are low. And like Surety Bank, for instance, we had a rental income account. Before we sold the building, we just assumed we'd get about $19,000 a year in rent from them. Well, we're obviously not gonna make that because we no longer rent to them. Granted, we did sell the building, but that's a one-time lump sum payment and then, So then if you flip the page and you look at expenses, they're kind of broken down by council member pay, the mayor's pay, all the personnel numbers. A lot of these things that are on here, like telephone postage, our utilities, our general liability insurance, a lot of those just are what they are, right? There's not a lot we can do about those numbers. Our insurance is just our insurance. I mean, when they come to us and they say, hey, it's going up 5%, there's only so many carriers that do municipal insurance. But then if you go to, here's a good example. Like at the very bottom of the second page, you see that 513-4605, repair and maintenance town center. We've way blown past the $10,000 budget that we set. And that is because when we did this budget, this building was just sitting here empty. So Jim and Yvonne were like, well, we might do some painting, we might do some whatever, but then we decided to move in here in January, so that blew that out of the water, because we had to start fixing, upgrading, and, whether or not next year we increase that or not, I mean, that depends. If you think that there's more stuff to do around here, we probably need to up that, at least for the next year. But that's not always gonna be the case, because I think once you get everything, once roofs are done, and once ACs are upgraded and working, hopefully you don't need that big of a budget, when it's just day-to-day maintenance. The next page, same thing, operating supplies, that's our day-to-day. It's wasp spray, it's towels, it's hand soap, it's, that kind of stuff. That budget wasn't very high to begin with, but the reason it went over is because we didn't even have an operating supplies thing really for this building when we moved here. So that kind of stuff is just stuff that we need to look at and we need to adjust. But then if you get down to where, about 3/4 of the way down the page, you see legal counsel. We budgeted 20 grand for legal counsel, not knowing what Christian was gonna have to do for us this year. And that may go up in the future if some of these DRA things have to go to court, or he has to do more letter writing for us or whatever. But as of right now, you can see we've used 25% of that budget. So some of that money, I think for this year, could be allocated somewhere else, because we're obviously not going to spend 20 grand between now and the end of September on legal.
I should hope not.
I hope not, yeah, unless something crazy happens, let's hope not. And as slow as the law moves, probably not this year.
Right.
So that would leave us with 15, right? So because it's 20 and we've.
Yeah, so you've got, if you look in that where it says the percent over budget you are, it shows that you've got about 14,800 left there. Obviously, you want to leave a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Christian is going to have more
Right.
invoices for the rest of the year, but, you could adjust that and move some of that elsewhere. Same with your comprehensive planning for Mark. We've only used 57% of that budget. So that's been a little bit lower than we anticipated. And again, going forward, next year you might adjust those budget items down if you think that, next year's gonna be about the same, and you might reallocate those funds to some other account where you need it more.
Let me interrupt you real quick,
Yeah.
Ryan, on the legal counsel. Is that, is that outside of his,
Well,
is
he's
that
got- yes,
outside
it
of
is.
him being
He's-
here?
He's got, if you look under,
I was gonna say, it's gotta be more than that.
if you look
Yeah,
under
'cause
other
I've signed a bunch of
services-
checks going to him, and it's more than $5,000.
Yeah, if you look under other services contractual, let me see which, if I can find where that's at.
Second one, second page,
Second page. Other,
5133-400, item number.
Oh, back page, yeah. Yeah, so other services contractual, you'll see we're already almost at our budget.
oh, okay, yeah,
That's
I got
anyone
you.
we contract with minus the sheriff.
Yeah,
So.
right, okay.
That's our pest control people, that's our cleaning people, it all gets put in, cause they're all contractual. So that's where all of that is
And
currently.
that's where Mark,
And-
I mean, not Mark, but
That's where
Christian's
Christian's
normal
normal
stuff is.
stuff is. Now, anything he does outside of that,
Right,
in
is-
addition to his normal, like 2 days a month
Is
or
legal
whatever's
counsel.
here, it goes into legal usually, yeah.
Well, we could probably move at least $12,000, I would think. Of the 14,800 that's available,
And see, like, if
I'd
you,
leave
then if
2,800.
you look down, you know, contractual sheriff, we already know what the sheriff.
I mean, it doesn't have, how close do they like to see it? Do we
I
know?
just don't think you wanna consistently go over.
Pardon me?
I don't think you wanna consistently go over.
Go over,
Not by a lot.
right?
So, you know, if you went to the state and you showed the state numbers and you were like, well, you know, we blew this budget by 500%, they're gonna be like, whoa, we need a justification for that. Now, if you can give them one, that's fine. You know, if you can explain to them, hey, this unforeseen thing happened and it was an emergency or we just had to spend this, because that's what Jim has had to do in the past. And Jim has also had to move some stuff around in the books to other places, you know, to make those
To make
numbers
it
look better.
more-
And, you know, there are some things, that's one of the reasons he does the audit for us, because he may come and look at these and go, you know, I wouldn't put this in this account. I would move this somewhere else. So he will do a little bit of cleanup before this ever goes to the state, you know. That's just a matter of, you know, Jim is the CPA. I am not a CPA, so he gets to make the determination as to whether or not we have something classified correctly. But I mean, there's, you know, stuff like our animal control budget, we said $1,000. We've obviously gone over that. Well, that's because we handed that back over to
Back
the
there to the
county.
Woods County, yeah.
So we're spending more money on that than we used to, and it was just Dustin handling, you know, calls. But a lot of it, I mean, really honestly, if you look at a lot of it, it's not, like, for instance, some of the things that are over, that account had a whopping $1,000 budget.
Right.
So it may, if you go down the percentage column, you may go, oh my God, we spent 232% of that budget. It was only a $1,500 budget to begin with. Those aren't that big of a deal. But I'm more concerned with some of these that are,
The big item.
yeah, and those are mostly on the last page. And a lot of those are, these are the meat of things. Like, this is all of our repairs, this is all of our street budgets, our parks budgets, our equipment purchases, rentals that we have. Like I said, street materials is actually very low this year. Street materials is anything that the public works boys buy. Trash bags to pick up trash, road signs, millings to fill in a pothole, you know. But Randy, you asked this several meetings ago, do we have it somewhere in the budget for them to go get a dump truck full of asphalt and repair potholes? The answer is yes, we do. It's in that street budget. That street budget is also where the county comes and does some grading on some dirt roads and they charge us for that. That's where that also goes, is into that street budget. So even with that being done, we're still way under budget on that item. So we may consider bumping that down a little bit and reallocating that money somewhere where it might better serve us.
I didn't think we had any more dirt roads in the cities.
I can find out because they sent me a thing. They
Sent you a bill
a while back. It's been a while.
And that was for grading.
It was for some grading they did somewhere.
Well, they did
Oh,
that.
oh,
same
oh,
with the
oh,
barn.
oh, here at the barn.
Oh, talking.
Yeah, that's where, I see them there grading every once in a while.
Right.
They just did that
That's
probably a
right.
month ago.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yep, that's where it is.
What goes under the new equipment, Public Works? If we've budgeted 50 grand and we haven't touched that.
The
penny.
40,000 for Public Works?
50? Is that the
50.
same one that I've mentioned before? New equipment, Public Works.
Okay, so new
Yes.
equipment, Public Works is probably if we have to buy a mower, if we have to buy an attachment for the tractor, if we have to buy, we talked about having to get something to paint the stripes in the road because ours was still messed up or something like that. Any kind of new, when they say equipment, they mean that type of stuff.
Oh, I think that's the
Like
one, that's the one I
heavy
mentioned.
equipment
earlier.
or accessories or, yeah, that would go in
Equipment
there.
would be under depreciation too, right? That would be stuff that would go under depreciation.
They'll put it on a depreciation schedule and Jim does all that at the end of the year. So that, the reason that is 0 is because he'll determine what the depreciation is and move stuff there. But again, you know, like, something to look at, like Sergia said, is we add up and we say, okay, if we've spent 10 grand this year throwing money to repair a 20-year-old Ford truck, would it be better to just use our new equipment budget and finance one for 3 years and then have a new truck instead of dumping money consistently into, you know, that's the kind of thing we need to start looking at. Because we budget for it, so we should use it, right? But I think that's what we all need to look at, and then you guys will have to decide, you know, like I said, these are kind of arbitrary numbers because Yvonne, it was her first year doing it, she was lost and confused. And they just tried to base it on last year. And I hate to say it, but this is the first year that the budget has ever actually been put into our accounting software so that you can even run a budget to actual report. So I have had trouble even finding budgets from like 2+ years ago for me to be able to put them in and see over time
What?
the sort of the forecast of stuff, right? So this is one of the things that Jim wanted me to prioritize when I got in here, is as soon as you can, we need to really nail down the budget and making sure we try to adhere to a budget. And honestly, if you look, we're doing okay. I mean, like I said, we show that we've used 101% of our income. That's because of the bank building sale. But if you go and you look at our overall expenses, which is like last page, 67% of our budget has been used up. So we're below, you know, our 75%. So at this point, overall, you're doing okay. You just need to allocate funds within these different items to kind of make those numbers look better. Because it looks weird if you've got, you know, oh, we didn't use any of our streets budget, but we used 500% of our tree trimming budget. You know?
Right, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, you could
That's a lot of money.
reallocate that to say, okay, well, we had a tree emergency this year, you know, so we took some money from here to cover that. And basically, from what Jim explained to me, as long as you have a meeting about it and everyone is clear on it, and that's what you decide, and there's official minutes for that, that sort of satisfies the state. They go, okay, they knew there were these shortfalls, or they knew that there was adjustments had to be made, and they addressed it. You know, I mean, you do as the town have a lot of leeway in how you handle that. I just don't wanna see us approve a bunch of stuff and spend a bunch of money and then just blow the budget and then have to explain to the state, hey, you know, we said that you were only gonna spend $1 million this year, but like really you spent 1.4, what's going on?
Let me ask you something on the front page
Yep.
at our income.
Mhm.
I'm guessing we will get the rest of the franchise fee from Duke Energy, correct?
You will continue to receive franchise fees from Duke Energy, yes. Now, whether or
So-
not they're as high as they anticipated they were gonna be is another story.
Well, let me ask you something. All right, let's throw out the bank sale. All right, in 2.5 more months, how close are we gonna be to that 1.227?
Right.
That's what I want to know,
Let's see real quick.
because I don't think we should use the bank sale as, for us making our budget work.
Right.
Right.
That should go somewhere for a rainy day, the way I look at it.
I mean,
We
I
just
think
take that out.
we should be all in agreement on that.
I think so. And just because something is budgeted, it doesn't mean we have to spend it either. But I think we do need to get together though and move it where it needs to be moved,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Make Jim's job easier, Ryan's job easier, and everybody else's.
Well, Jim's job is a lot easier since Ryan came.
Since
on board,
Ryan's here, yeah.
Because it's most of the time it was delinquent, and so now things are done more in a timely fashion, so that we're not always delinquent. So,
Well, with it all in QuickBooks, it shouldn't be delinquent, because it's used every day, you can print a report every day, I mean, that's just.
and it's not.
Everything is in there now, so it's.
So if
D-
you,
d- Yeah,
if you took the bank sale out of where we're at currently, our current total income without that would be $817,107, which is only 66%
of our budget.
of our, what we forecasted as our income this year, and so that's below.
That's
where we
below,
need to
and we
be.
spent 67. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, I know we have spent a lot of money this year, and I know there's a lot of money that needs to be spent in other places. And that's no doubt about that.
But like we had
But-
spoken about at a council meeting before, this might be where you decide then to start utilizing things like loans versus just paying for stuff 100% out of pocket, which we have a habit of doing.
Mm-hmm.
Just like in the water fund, which we haven't even looked at yet, but in the water fund, you know, USG will work with us to stretch this $80,000 worth of stuff at the tower over multiple payments rather than one payment, because they know that municipalities like us have to budget for that stuff.
Well, that's what we
So-
need to do.
You know, anytime we're looking at like a road project or, you know, if we have to fix up the community center to make it ADA compliant, any of that stuff, you know, there's financing options available out there to municipalities that we may need to explore. Because if you could pay it, you know, a couple grand a month as a payment versus, you know, a lump sum of $100,000 in a year, it seems like a no-brainer that you would just put it on a loan or whatever and pay it, you know. And Christian and I had talked a little bit about that, because he said, I don't understand why the town doesn't explore those options more. Well, maybe it's just because they didn't have someone here at the time to chase that down, you know. So that may be something we need to look at to help our money go further in the future, you know.
Now, where does the, money from the monthly market, go?
The vendor.
The
market.
vendor?
That goes under special events. So, we don't actually receive that as I don't have it as an income account on here, it just offsets our expense account for special events. So you won't see it on the income thing, you'll see it if you flip through.
It's on the last page.
Yeah, the special events section on the last thing, see the reason why it shows that we've only used 27% of our special events budget is because that money, Jim doesn't wanna really get into that as income, we kind of look at that as a donation. You know, if you were considering that income like a rental or something, then you get into the issue of taxes and all this stuff. But if they're just making a donation to the town to use the space, you know. And we in the future may have to,
Is that my last page?
we may have to address that too, because if that becomes a long-term permanent thing, it may have to be handled differently.
Well,
But,
I'm gonna ask, like, I know, can't you have just a sub-account under that for special events?
yeah,
And you can
Or you
sub it
can
out
class
under
it.
vendor,
Or you
sub
can
it
class
out
it,
under,
yeah.
yeah.
Like some things I just class, that way if you wanna report, like these buildings out here, they're all classed, building 3, building 5. And I can
Got it.
pull an individual report and say, okay, 20% of our budget went to building 3. And I'm just now starting to do that because it was not set up that way before. So everything new going forward, I've done that way. Because it helps for me, because like if you come to the office and you say, how much have we spent to get that building ready, I can pull one report and know.
So if I come to you and ask you about the market, you would know?
Yes, I can find that.
Not
Should be.
necessarily.
Unless a hurricane blows through town.
Right.
Hurricane can blow that.
Yeah.
Are those
Completely.
expenses under hurricane, or do they go under hurricane expense, or does it
Well,
still
you
go
may,
under?
for things like that, you may be able to put it under your street budget, like you do the road grading and stuff, because if it's affecting your right of ways and all, technically that's a streets issue. So it just depends on where it's at, but you.
But the
could-
same
you could-
thing, you could put it under a sub, street hurricane, street
Yeah.
maintenance.
And I have to look at the uniform accounting code for the state, and Jim could probably help with this. But we may eventually even need to put a strict budget item in there just for like emergency cleanup or emergency management. And then it would all go there, and then you can at least justify, hey, the reason we overspent this is because there was an emergency.
Well, in doing that is gonna be easier if we have funds available to us to pull the report to give to somebody to say, here's what we did.
Well, and also like if the state offers you disaster funds.
Correct.
Mhm.
You could go to them and say, this is the actual dollar amount we spent on cleaning up hurricane damage.
Correct.
Right. And as far as I know, he doesn't have anything in there like that,
I haven't
but
seen
I could
it.
be wrong. But I mean, you'll see that a bulk of our stuff is obviously, number one, it's town employees, which is a big part of it, but also all that stuff on the last page, all of the
Mhm.
utilities, repairs, and I mean, like, you know, those are things that a lot of it you can't avoid, like, for instance, utilities, you gotta have water in all the park bathrooms, you gotta have street lights. You know, I don't think people realize how much we pay just in that kind of stuff, you know? And those are things that, you know, I don't think you're gonna be able to shave a lot off that. It's not like you can call and say, hey, shut the lights off at Northwood Park. Now, the water fund, we haven't even talked about yet, and for the most part, the water fund does okay. But the one thing that we do not have budgeted for in the water fund, well, two things we don't have budgeted for. One was the repair that we're doing at the tower. So we do have an item in the water fund for, on the second page of the water fund, there's an equipment expense thing for $67,000, a GL account for equipment expense. Technically, that's probably equipment. I mean, it's a mixing system and a vent. So we'll be able to use part of that budget for that. But obviously, it's gonna go over because it's more than $60,000, right?
But some of that would go under repairs and maintenance, like the
It
new
can.
valves and stuff like
Right.
that.
The valves and
Yeah.
all
Those
the
are
repairs.
repairs.
Yes, for sure.
That's correct. But the new stuff, the
The mixer.
mixer and all that will go under, equipment expense because like you said before, that will have to be depreciated over however many years. And then the other thing that's not in here is we still owe SGS $100,000+ to finish the wells. Because remember, we went over our grant and we had to pay $230,000 out of our own pocket. Well, we already sent them about 130. But there's 108 plus whatever that change order was, $7,000 that we approved about a month ago or a month and a half ago. So. And that was kind of what I had alluded to before, you know, when I said the water fund could be in a little bit of trouble because $200,000 overage is a lot of money for you to have to pick up because the water fund doesn't bring in, I mean, it brings in quite a bit of money every month, but if you look right there, so far this year, all the water payments that we've collected from all the residents only equal $250,000. So then you're gonna turn around and pay 200 of that to, you know, it's almost a year's worth of your water bills. And we didn't put that on a loan. I mean, it's, at least with like the sewer system that we talked about, that's a 30-year, 0% interest loan. But we didn't get that for this grant. This grant was, we'll pay $650,000, anything over that, we're just responsible for it. So, I'm not saying we can't finance it, you may be able to finance it somehow, but we haven't looked into it.
And none of the money from the general funds can be transferred to the water?
It can, yes. We had discussed that when we sold the bank building. We said you may have to use some of those funds to cover, cause I mean, we've committed to the water project. SGS is gonna finish it regardless, you know, it needs to be finished regardless. But Jim and I had talked about that because Jim said, you know, you may have to take some of that money and use that to pay, depending on how your budget looks at the end of the year. And that is something that he and I will discuss probably here in the next couple of months. But then luckily after that, the well project will be done and you won't have, my only concern when Mark was talking that night about, oh, well, you know, you're only gonna be responsible for 20% of the design grant plus the overages. Well, what are the overages? Because on the water project, it ended up being $230,000. What are they gonna be for the design grant? I guess you won't know until they bring a change order to you, you know, so that makes me a little nervous, but, and then you'll see like in the water fund, one of our expense items is $40,000 in rent to the general fund.
Mhm.
That is an old budget item that we're going to get rid of this year. This is back when the water fund used to, they were looking for expenses, they were looking for things to allocate.
Right.
And that was the water fund's way of offloading some money and helping out the general fund, but there's so many expenses in the water fund now, with grants and
Mhm.
mark stuff and all the planning and comprehensive stuff that we're just gonna do away with. So you'll free up.
Ryan, why don't we find out though if we can finance that other 100,000 to S?
Well,
We can, I mean, we can ask. I don't, you know, I'll find out what they
I
need to
mean,
know.
we can, in 4 years.
Stretch it out however,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
It's better than life
Yeah, I
and
mean,
jet.
sure, yeah.
The
It's-
life of the well, I mean, those wells are gonna last you decades,
Oh,
right?
Lord, yeah.
So what's financing them for 4 years?
Right.
If it helps you out on your budget every year. But I
Or we
think we
could
have to
finance
start
it, yeah,
looking
it's
at,
brand new, we could probably finance it longer than that.
yeah, but we have to start looking at town projects in that length
Scope.
of time, right? In
Yeah.
that scope, like, you know, obviously, if you've got the money to drop 10 grand on something, do it. But if you're talking about repaving or adding significant infrastructure or
Right.
a vehicle
Yeah,
or a
that's-
tractor, you know, it really needs to be financed. Just to help us out.
And like
Okay.
Bob said, we can't, the sale of that bank building is wonderful,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, we can't use it to make things ends
rely
meet.
on that.
You
No.
can't
For
rely on
our-
it for next year,
No.
but Jim will use it for this year. Just like Jim used ARPA funds for the past 3 years, because, you know, that was part of your budget that year. So yeah, it's gonna help your numbers this year, but you can't bank on it for next year.
No.
So, and what
Did
you,
we not have some CDs? I was looking and.
we have one CD
We have one CD.
that I know of, that Surety Bank. Yeah. Cause I get an interest statement.
Do you know what that,
I don't. I could try to find out, but I don't have any information on it. I just know that at the end of the year, Jim and I have to, you know, put the interest from it in QuickBooks. So I know that it's there. I can see it on the bank account, but I don't have any info on it.
And it ain't on here.
No, these are only income and expenses, so all of our bank accounts aren't on here, our liabilities aren't on here.
And I think we all can identify, we're talking about the budget here for the town of Pierson, but you can identify personally how the expenses, how they're completely, things are just so expensive compared to a year ago, 2 years ago, when that's related to the water plant. I mean, you get a grant, you start construction, and then look at how the prices have, it's just, doesn't seem real, what things cost. So that's added to I think that's part of what, that created that.
Right, and 200,000 for an unforeseen is a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
But the SGS construction, I don't think anybody realized how things have skyrocketed. You go to buy something and it's 3 times the price that it was a year ago.
Well, my understanding of the SGS thing is we knew when they started construction that the price had gone up. And somewhere at a council meeting, and I'm sure I can find it on the minutes, we agreed to take $230,000 of the ARPA funds, set those aside, and use that to pay overage, and then instead they ended up getting used for the sheriff contract. So we kind of double dipped into it because those just didn't get put aside like it was voted on. So regardless, you were gonna have to find that $230,000, whether you used it for the sheriff or whether you used it for the wells,
Well.
we were gonna have to come up with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where we're at, is we used it for the sheriff, now we have to come up with it for the wells. So, and the sheriff, I will let you know, the budget for the sheriff this year is $4 more than last year. So basically the exact same price, 304,000, whatever it was on here, is what we're paying for the sheriff this year. Because they already came and brought me their little projection for the year. And I will say the sheriff is our biggest expense.
Yes, it is.
Any questions?
I guess my question to all of us is, are we all in agreement that maybe we need to look at this quarterly?
Yep.
I think so.
I believe so, at least every
Yeah.
time we make
Yeah.
monetary decisions.
Right.
Yeah.
You know about it a lot quicker doing it
Yeah.
that way, Brandy. I think that's a great idea.
I know we
I
talked
think
about
so
that
too,
before,
yeah.
doing our financials and our budget and everything.
We should look at this at least every quarter.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a smart thing to do just because you've got fairly current numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you see yourself getting into, okay, like, hey, we're at the top of our repairs budget, you know, maybe this waits, or maybe we go for a more economical option, or whatever the case. But I think it helps you in decision-making,
Oh, yeah.
know where you stand, right? Because we just approve stuff sometimes, but we don't really talk about what have we already spent or what haven't we spent. So, but you know, and it goes the other direction too, like Hagstrom Road, you know, we were all concerned about Hagstrom Road. Well, this whole time that we've been worried about that, there's this baked in item for road repairs and construction, right? That it's just untouched. That we could have been, I mean, you could argue that the surveying and stuff that we're having to get done by Eford could all fall under that, because it's all part of road construction. You know, we had to get it done to fix the road. So, that's just the kind of thing that you have to look at, you know, like how much do we have to throw at this?
Yeah.
So,
Well, luckily, we're at a position now that we can go forward on a monthly basis because we do have our finances up to par. In the past, we haven't. We
and
always
so,
have.
I will tell you what I try to do is, because Yvonne still writes checks for everything, she still pays monthly bills. But every month when I reconcile, because I reconcile everything. So I put in all our income from the state and stuff like that. And then I put in all of our credit card charges, and it goes wherever it needs to go, operating supplies, street materials, whatever. Once everything is reconciled, I actually go back and look at all the transactions she's entered for the month and make sure that they're allocated to the correct accounts, because sometimes Yvonne doesn't know, and that's not Yvonne's fault, you know. But sometimes things, you read it and you're like, okay, well, that really probably shouldn't be there, it should probably be here. And then the crazy thing is Jim's gonna come behind me and do the same thing to me. But you kinda want that.
But you do want.
Now you've got 3 sets of eyes on it,
And
right?
you shouldn't be reconciling and putting in the bills. I mean, that's a double whammy there, you
Right.
know, I mean,
Yeah.
yes, I do it for my business, but as a,
Well, and I do it for Southern too,
Right.
but that's something that Yvonne
but if you have
has
a
done.
second check,
Right,
you know, this person's writing them, this person's
Right.
reconciling them,
right,
it's better check and balance out.
Mm-hmm.
right.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, you
I
know,
agree.
this could be changed a little bit in the next couple of months, because Jim may come in here and go, actually, I don't wanna put that there, I'd rather allocate that here. So this is just a working set of numbers. I'm gonna guess it's pretty close. Some of the stuff I went back and actually looked at how he did it in previous years, and I tried to kind of match that, because I come from a business background, and the state has its own unified accounting format that they follow. So I'm the type of person, I would create my own expense accounts for things, but gyms, you have to follow a certain, they have to be numbered a certain way and named a certain way. So again, that may change, but at least we kind of know, bottom line wise, I mean, regardless of how they're allocated, you can look at the actual numbers at the bottom and see how much you've spent and how much you've brought in. And I think that helps.
Good job.
Good job, and because of the good job he's doing, we can do it quarterly, as Randy said about, what did we think about doing it quarterly? We couldn't have done it quarterly before,
Yeah.
you know.
It's done.
We, in fact, it
It
was,
wasn't done, right,
We
yeah.
got 11 months behind.
so,
I think a good idea might just be to put it as an agenda item and me just present these to you in a packet and just give you a quick 5 or 10 minute, here's where we are. We don't really have to necessarily go over everything, but you'll at least have the numbers, and that will help you make decisions going forward.
Why?
Right? What's that? I would say quarterly probably, unless you wanna do it once a month, it really depends. I can do them as often as you want me to do them. Once they're in QuickBooks, it's just a click of a few buttons and I can run reports, you know. And I will say that we're, just for your own information, going forward, probably in the next fiscal year, we are gonna have to start probably keeping digital records of, like Sue was talking about, every check you've written, your check register, all that stuff, because these public records requests that start coming in, they want all that.
But
And-
can't you just pull that from the download from the bank and just upload it into QuickBooks?
Well, yeah, like they want like all your purchasing history and stuff like that, and so I would like to get it to a point where like all of our invoices are digital and everything, so you know, when Hunter Pest Control sends me an invoice, I don't have to go dig through a file cabinet.
You have desktop, right?
Yeah, but there's actually an option in desktop where you can attach
Yeah.
a digital copy of the invoice to everything. I've never played with that, but it's something I'd like to play with.
I use a lot of that.
Uh-huh.
I'll attach invoices and all the supply bills or whatever, and I attach them to the invoice that
So you
it's
always
for,
have a
and
copy.
it's all there in one spot, and you just click it, and
Yeah,
it is way easier that way.
right.
But I use all.
Doing it digitally?
Yeah, just put
But
scanning
just-
it in
just-
and having it right
Mhm.
there with the invoice, so when they open the invoice, they can open all those little attachments too, if you include them.
Yeah. And it's a daunting task if
Yeah,
you're
but
looking at
it's-
a year's worth of stuff, but if you're doing it daily as
Yeah.
things come in,
Yeah.
it's a 5 or 10 minute part of your day, and then it's done, right? So we just need to pick a date and say from here on, all the stuff is gonna be digitally cataloged, and that way there's a paper trail to it without me having to dig through a box.
Wow.
Which we'll still keep a paper record of everything
Right.
too, because computers break down, whatever, but,
Well, I would say the new fiscal year for sure.
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
say
you don't
definitely.
do it before,
yeah.
going forward.
And I'll be honest, I dropped the ball on that because I wanted to do it this past fiscal year, but there was so much
A
going
lot.
on. Because I didn't start her full time till, what, February or something like that, and by that time we're already 4 months into it or whatever, so. But starting this year, yes, I would definitely like to do that, and that way, you know, any records that you guys would need, I should just be able to click a button and it'd be there, so. But I know for us to do anything, I mean, what do you guys wanna do about this? Because we will have to probably reallocate some stuff for the end of this year. So do you wanna, I know we can't really technically do it here, we have to vote on it at a meeting, right? So do we wanna just kinda come up with a draft?
So, you wanna maybe come up with some recommendations, Brian? And present them,
Okay,
and then we can kind of,
yeah.
you know, have our own opinions or whatever, but,
Well, I would say just to make things easy, since we're so close to the end of the fiscal year, probably just be best to take some of those accounts that have huge balances left in them and reallocate that to accounts where we've already overspent, like our repair and maintenance account,
Yeah.
things like
Tree
that.
trimming.
Tree trimming.
And, right, and then next year,
Mhm.
for the upcoming budget, we really do need to sit down though and go, okay, you know, do we foresee this being the same this year? Are we gonna spend less on this year? You know, these numbers are kind of a jumping off point, but like I said, some of them were arbitrary, they just came up with a random number. We don't have to adhere to that. But at least for the end of this year, I would say just try to clean it up a little bit so that it doesn't look like there's these huge swings between, we use 0% of this budget and 600% of this budget. Cause I don't know, that just kinda looks like you're not really paying attention to your budget, right? That's not good.
So I agree with Ms. Lenny, maybe if you have some suggestions for next meeting, allocate to whatever's, you know, account hasn't been touched, to whatever we've been gone over, and then just let us know what we need to move over,
Right.
you know,
Okay.
to make it look cleaner.
And then I do think after we, at some point, I'll probably talk to Jim, but, you know, here at some point in the next, we're already in the middle of July, probably like by the beginning of September, we need to be looking at a preliminary for next year. Because that's all gotta be into the state by a certain time, there's a deadline for that. So, but again, as long as we have working numbers, it should be fairly easy, right?
Oh, great job, Ryan, and, it's, Ryan can make suggestions as, Sergi had asked him to do, and then, but I would encourage each member to, you got it,
Yeah.
take it home and study it, and you might, each one might have something, hey, we need to, this is something that's, I'd like to see, or,
And I will tell you, I can pull you, it would be a lot of paperwork, I can pull you individual reports for each of these accounts and you can see what that number is from. In other words, every single invoice that's listed under, you know, road repairs or equipment repairs, I can pull a list of all that stuff and you can see, okay, we spent X amount at Limitless on these vehicles and we spent X amount on, you know, cleaning. And so if that's there, if you would like to know that information, it would just be a lot of paper. Just be prepared. Also, maybe we need to talk again going forward about things like financing. I'll be honest with you, I don't know the first thing about municipal financing. I know there are different options available to us as a town than there would be to
An
a
individual.
commercial business.
Right, yeah.
Right? But that might be something that we wanna discuss looking into, because maybe not right now, but going forward in the future, we may wanna finance some of these capital improvements and stuff that we do. So.
that's the,
Mine, we have an account with Kubota. We don't own our tractors.
Right.
We pay 0% interest when they have it. Does the town, could the town take it? The reason I'm asking, while we are renting or paying, they take care of all the expenses, it's covered with insurance. We don't have anything. We just pay 200 or something a month.
Right.
Well, do we qualify like that for the town?
That's the question I
That's
have
a
to
big
ask.
savings.
Right.
that's a lease.
No, we bought the tractor on time with 0% interest and over 60 payments. And from the company of Kubota. And so while we have it, we don't have to pay, we have all the insurance on it. If somebody steals it, if it's broken, anything, it's covered. And it doesn't come on our expense, it comes from the contractor.
some towns are part of like fleet programs and stuff where you can buy into that, and I don't know what's out there. We've never had to look since I've been here, but I would be curious to know, just for our own knowledge, what our options are in the event that we do need to replace a piece of equipment, a truck, but also what our options are to finance like town projects, if we've got a paver road, if we've got, like North Road. If I get quotes back on North Road and they say it's $80,000, we're not gonna wanna just cop up $80,000, right? We're gonna wanna see how can we pay that off over some time. But that's something I can look into as long as everyone's okay with me looking into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look into it, sure.
Okay. I'll just call some other places and find out how they.
Jim Ashby might be able to give us some information on municipal financing.
That's a good idea, yeah.
And I know that, Tom Gustafson at Florida Rural Water had some basic info on, because we had talked about financing certain parts of the water project for the water tower. They're familiar with that because Florida Rural Water actually finances stuff. I don't know if they partner with a credit union or a bank or how they do it, but they actually have their own program, so he may have some insight into that kind of thing too. So I can ask him. But I would be curious, just like I said, going forward, we need to know what all of our options are. It may help us from a budgetary standpoint. That's all I've got, unless you got any questions.
Any questions for Ryan?
Well, I think we all need to take these home and look at them real good.
Yeah, take them home and look at them, and if you, I have to abbreviate a
Come
lot
back
in
and
here because there's only so much room for a
bring some
title. So if you have a question about what something is. or what
suggestions.
something is, now,
Okay.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yep.
You're a godsend to this town.
I'm telling you,
Oh, my Lord.
I had no idea what a mess we were in.
Bad.
Bad
So we're
mess.
better, we're better.
Much better, thanks to Ryan.
We just need people, and we should kind of start buying more stuff so that our income.
And Jim Ashby's very happy too, because he gets things on a more timely.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure of that.
Yeah, Jim wasn't really sure what to do when he came in this past time because we had it all ready for him. I think he thought he was gonna be camped out for a week. He was only here for 2 days. And one of those days he had COVID, so that wasn't fun. But, yeah, he should be happy this year.
Well, we're fortunate, we're in agreement, we're fortunate to have Ryan, and we're fortunate to have Weston and Gregory. Jim Ashby does a good job.
Jim does a very good job. Yeah, Jim has been very helpful in a lot of this stuff because, like I said, our municipality is different. I've had to ask him a lot of questions, but he's always answered everything.
On a different note, the air is working now.
The air is working now. I turned it up a little bit because it was freezing when we got in here, so I'm kind of warm. But I turned up to 77. It was a belt and 20 air filters. There's 20 air filters in that system back there.
Wow.
So now we know.
20 of them.
20.
Well, we got it
And he
fixed.
said we should probably replace them at least every 6 months, but they probably haven't been done in 6+ years, so
Mhm.
now is the thought.
Well, now that's interesting because we called Heritage and they came to service and get it going. So they didn't check it?
Maybe, I don't know. They told me it should be done every 6 months, so if we checked them when we moved in or before we moved in, it's already been, it's been 7 months since we moved in. I don't know when they would have checked it, but.
Yeah, we're not air conditioning people. We contract with Heritage or different companies to provide service.
He showed, Brett Tollefson that came from Heritage, showed Chris where all the filters are, but Chris said, we'd probably rather just have them do it, because there's so many of them, and you have to cut the filters to fit, because they're not standard sizes, you can't just go buy them. So, he said maybe in the future, every 6 months, we'll have Heritage change them.
Anything
The
else?
sidewalk's gone.
I saw that today.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
They took it out this morning.
It's gone.
Anyone complain about that or anything?
No complaints. Okay, well, thank everyone for coming to the workshop. Thank y'all for coming. Being no further business at this workshop, this meeting is adjourned.